the Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport. Possibly the biggest rebuild I'm about to take on. I know Bugatti are watching this, and I am trying to do you guys proud.
In the crash, a wrecked Bugatti, a locked VIN, and a billionaire CEO who wouldn't stop watching. When Mat Armstrong bought a smashed Chiron Pur Sport, one of only 60 ever built.
What do you got to say to that, Mr. Matt?
I think we can rebuild this.
You think so?
I think we can.
Bugatti refused to sell him a single part. No bolt, no panel, nothing official. Then Mate Rimac himself stepped in, offering to fix it at the Molsheim factory. Armstrong said no. And this wasn't even the first time this exact standoff happened. His Veyron rebuild hit the same wall months earlier. So today, let's discuss what's really going on between these two, why Rimac keeps engaging personally, and whether Armstrong's next build could actually be a Rimac. The build that started it all. To understand where this might be going, you have to understand exactly where it started. And it starts with a car that, by all luck, should never have ended up in anyone's home garage. The Chiron Pur Sport in question wasn't originally Armstrong's. It belonged to a fellow content creator, Alex Gonzalez, better known online as FX Alex GYT. During a stunt that went badly wrong, the car was damaged.
This is the $6 million Bugatti Pur Sport that was crashed by Alex.
And it eventually turned up on Copart, the kind of salvage auction site where wrecked vehicles go to either get parted out for scrap or get one last shot at a second life. For most cars in that state, especially something this exotic and this rare, the story usually ends right there, quietly, in a scrapyard somewhere. But Armstrong saw an opportunity where most people would have seen a write-off.
The Bugatti was still listed for sale at Copart auction, and somebody bought it.
Here was one of just 60 Chiron Pur Sports ever built, sitting in pieces, and instead of walking away, he leaned in. He bought it. And that decision alone set off a chain reaction nobody quite expected, least of all Armstrong himself. Bugatti had locked the car's VIN. In plain terms, that meant no authorized dealership anywhere in the world would sell Armstrong the parts he needed to bring it back to life. Not a bolt, not a panel, nothing through official channels. For most builders, that would be the end of the road. But for a channel whose entire identity is built around proving that impossible repairs are actually possible, this was the ultimate test, and arguably the perfect storm for content. So he adapted, and this is where the story stops being just about stubbornness and starts being about genuine ingenuity. His team turned to 3D scanning and CNC machining.
All these little dots on here is so the guys here can scan it, 3D scan it to make a full CAD drawing of it, and not only make it, they're going to improve it.
To recreate components Bugatti refused to supply, essentially reverse engineering pieces of a multi-million-dollar hypercar from scratch. Airbags that couldn't be sourced through official channels ended up being adapted from, of all things, an Audi A3. A detail that alone tells you how far outside the box this project had to go. Custom radiators were fabricated entirely from raw materials to replace the ones destroyed in the crash. And then there was the gearbox mount, a part specifically engineered to shatter on impact so the rest of the car's structure stays protected in a crash. Even a minor shunt can snap it under normal circumstances. A genuine replacement was priced so high it was effectively unobtainable, so a specialist ended up TIG welding the broken mount back together, something a lot of people in the industry assumed simply couldn't be done on a component that's designed, by definition, to fail. Every single one of these workarounds wasn't just a mechanical solution to a practical problem. It was a message, whether Armstrong intended it that way or not. Bugatti said no, and Armstrong found a way anyway, video after video.
So far on the Bugatti, the only thing that we've actually needed to repair is the gearbox bracket. It's going to get a lot harder, especially without Bugatti's help.
Update after update, in front of an audience that kept growing every time a new obstacle appeared. And it's worth pausing on just how unusual that is in this industry. Most builders who take on a project like this quietly give up somewhere around the second or third impossible wall they hit. Sourcing custom radiators for a car that only 60 people on the planet own isn't like ordering a part off a shelf. It's closer to reverse engineering a piece of aerospace equipment with almost no documentation to go on. The fact that Armstrong's team kept finding a next move, over and over, is exactly why this project turned into appointment viewing, instead of just another garage build lost in the algorithm. Because this wasn't just a builder taking on an underdog project anymore. This was quietly becoming personal, on both sides of the fence. And that's exactly why, when Bugatti's own CEO started paying attention, the internet lost its mind a little. Mate Rimac breaks his silence. Here's where the story stops being just YouTuber fixes a wrecked hypercar and starts becoming something much, much bigger. Mate Rimac isn't just some executive sitting behind a desk somewhere. He's the founder of Rimac.
Two companies, it's Bugatti Rimac and Rimac Technology. And now I just appointed finally a CEO for Rimac Technology, so...
The company behind some of the fastest production electric vehicles on the planet. Built from an idea in a garage into a genuine rival to the biggest names in performance cars. And through a merger that reshaped the hypercar world entirely, he's now the man steering Bugatti itself, one of the most storied and exclusive automotive brands in existence. So when word got out that Bugatti was refusing to support Armstrong's rebuild, it wasn't some anonymous spokesperson or PR department that responded. It was Rimac, personally, in his own words on his own social media, with his own name attached. He addressed the growing chatter around the project directly, and he didn't hold back. He pushed back on the idea that Bugatti's repair costs were unreasonable, explaining that a lot of the numbers circulating online simply weren't accurate. He made the case that limited production hypercars like the Chiron come with parts that are extraordinarily expensive to develop and manufacture in the first place, because you're not spreading that cost across hundreds of thousands of units the way a mainstream manufacturer would. It's a fair point, and one that a lot of automotive engineers would probably back him up on. But then he did something that took a lot of people by surprise. He said the car was welcome back at the Molsheim factory in France, the actual home of Bugatti, the place where every one of these cars is born, if Armstrong wanted to send it there for a proper factory-backed fix. On paper, that sounds like an olive branch, a genuine resolution. Case closed, right? Armstrong said no. He doubled down on doing it himself, on his own terms, in his own garage.
That challenge has become increasingly difficult as Bugatti refused to sell us parts.
But we just don't think it's safe, and that's why we can't support it.
In front of his own cameras. And that's the exact moment this stopped being a simple parts dispute and turned into something that felt almost personal between two people who, on paper, one guy just wants to prove that a wrecked hypercar can be saved outside a factory, using ingenuity instead of a blank checkbook. The other guy is protecting the reputation, the safety standards, and the resale value of a brand worth billions of dollars. But here's the detail a lot of people glossed over in all the noise. Rimac didn't just comment once and disappear back into the background. He kept watching. He kept engaging directly in the comments section as new updates rolled out, month after month, project after project. For someone running one of the most valuable automotive groups on the planet, that's not the kind of attention you give to something you genuinely don't care about. So ask yourself this: why would a CEO with an entire global company to run keep tabs on one YouTuber's garage project, video after video, for this long?
There's a lot of stuff missing off the back, okay? I've just been thinking more and more as I'm doing this. Alex drove this car a lot without any coolant in.
That's not corporate damage control anymore. That stopped being about optics a long time ago. That's something closer to genuine personal interest. And as we're about to see, this wasn't the first time. If the Chiron saga was the only time Armstrong and Bugatti ever butted heads, you could chalk it up to one messy, unusual situation. A single disagreement that got blown wildly out of proportion by the internet, the way most car drama does. And that detail changes absolutely everything about how you should be reading this story. Before the Chiron even entered the picture, Armstrong had already been deep into rebuilding a Bugatti Veyron, a totally separate project on a totally different car, with its own long list of headaches that, funnily enough, followed almost the exact same script. At one point during that build, he reached out directly to Bugatti for help with an issue on the car, and he was met with a quote so expensive it became a story of its own, circulating across the automotive press in its own right. This wasn't a one-time frustration, born out of one bad customer service experience. It was part of a running theme in his relationship with the brand. Elsewhere in that same Veyron project, a diagnostic scan flagged a fault with the fuel pump control module, and what followed was hours of painstaking troubleshooting, pulling apart interior panels, chasing down engine bay fuses that all tested perfectly fine one by one, trying to solve a problem the manufacturer wasn't exactly rushing to help him with. And yet, in the middle of all that frustration, there were small, satisfying wins too. Moments where Armstrong found a workaround that saved him an absolute fortune, like managing to source and fit a fix using a part that cost him just a few dollars, compared to what an official Bugatti repair route would have charged him for the exact same result. There's something almost poetic about a multi-million-dollar hypercar being brought back to life.
Here is the front of a Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport, and here is the rear half of a Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport, and today we've got to connect both of them together.
Two separate builds, two separate Bugattis, two separate situations, months apart, where the official manufacturer route was either locked, restricted, or priced in a way that made independent repair feel almost impossible by design. That's not a coincidence anymore. That's a pattern, plain and simple. And patterns tell you something about a relationship that a single one-off dispute never could. If you're Armstrong, at what point does the manufacturer isn't supporting me stop being an occasional obstacle and start becoming a defining feature of how you have to operate as a builder? And if you're Rimac, watching this same tension play out project after project, car after car, at what point do you start wondering whether the actual solution here isn't tighter restrictions and bigger parts blackouts, but a completely different kind of relationship entirely? It's also worth asking why Bugatti keeps ending up in this exact position in the first place. This is a brand built almost entirely on exclusivity. 60 units here, a few hundred there, cars that are practically hand-assembled rather than mass-produced. That business model protects value for owners, but it also means there's no real playbook for what happens when one of those cars ends up wrecked and cheap on a salvage site instead of quietly repaired through insurance and a deal. Armstrong isn't breaking an established system. He's operating in a gap that Bugatti's own exclusivity created. And that gap is exactly where all of this friction keeps showing up, project after project. That question, right there, is exactly where things start to get genuinely interesting. Reading between the lines. Here's where we stop just recapping events and actually start reading between the lines. Because the tone between these two men says a lot more about where this is headed. In a podcast appearance on Cars and Money, hosted by Rob Moore and Carl Hartley, Armstrong finally addressed the whole saga directly, and what he said quietly reframed the entire narrative for anyone paying close attention. He compared his dynamic with Rimac to a Messi versus Ronaldo type of rivalry. Two people who genuinely respect each other, who share an obsession with the exact same world of hypercars and engineering, but whose public personas get pulled into a manufactured conflict. The second, corporate interests get layered on top. In his own words, he made it clear this was never some bitter personal feud between two men who dislike each other. They both live and breathe the same passion for pushing cars to their absolute limits. It's the business side of things, the brand protection and the legal exposure, that turns a shared passion into a public standoff neither of them fully wanted. That's a massive tell, and it's worth sitting with for a second. Think about it. If Rimac genuinely saw Armstrong as some reckless amateur damaging Bugatti's reputation, one video at a time, would he really have personally offered to bring the car back to the Molsheim factory at all? Would he keep showing up in the comments, engaging directly instead of just letting a PR department quietly handle it from a distance? CEOs running billion-dollar companies don't usually spend their limited time going back and forth with a YouTuber unless there's something underneath that public tension that actually resembles genuine respect. It's also worth noticing how differently the two of them talk about this compared to how their fan bases talk about it. Online, the comment sections have turned this into a full-blown pick-a-side battle. Team Armstrong versus Team Bugatti. Underdog builder versus corporate gatekeeper. But neither Armstrong nor Rimac has ever actually framed it that way themselves. That gap between how the internet wants to see this and how the two people actually living it describe it is one of the clearest signs that the real story is quieter and a lot more mutual than the drama headlines suggest. And Armstrong's own comments back that theory up completely. He's suggested that some of the friction may not even fully originate from Rimac himself, but from other layers deeper within Bugatti's corporate structure. People focused purely on protecting brand image, protecting resale value, protecting the exclusivity that comes with owning one of only 60 cars in existence anywhere on Earth. Rimac, meanwhile, finds himself in a genuinely strange position of his own making. He's an engineer at heart, before he's anything else, someone who built an entire hypercar company from nothing on the back of pure innovation and stubborn problem-solving. Watching someone attempt genuinely inventive workarounds, 3D scanning parts that don't exist anymore, machining components that can't be bought at any price, might appeal to exactly the same instincts that made Rimac successful in the first place. There's a version of this where Rimac isn't watching out of concern at all. He's watching the way one engineer watches another engineer solve a problem he'd genuinely want to solve himself, if he had the time. That's a very different lens than CEO monitoring a PR risk, and it lines up far better with everything Armstrong has said about how the two of them actually talk when the cameras and the corporate stakes aren't dictating the conversation. So when you strip away the headlines, strip away the Bugatti refuses to help YouTuber framing that gets clicks but doesn't tell the whole story, what you're actually left with is two people who like the same things, who love the same machines, and who've ended up on opposite sides of a corporate line that neither one of them fully drew themselves. And once you start seeing the relationship that way, the idea of them actually working together stops sounding far-fetched. It starts sounding almost inevitable. Which brings us to the question everyone watching this saga actually wants answered. Could a partnership be next? Let's actually sit with this idea for a second, because it's more than just a fun hypothetical to end the video on. It's a genuinely plausible next chapter. Picture it. Instead of fighting an uphill battle against a locked VIN and a blacklisted parts catalog, Armstrong gets his hands on a Rimac. Maybe a Nevera, maybe something newer still under wraps. Except this time, with the company's actual backing. No adversarial dynamic playing out in public. No CEO commenting from a cautious distance, weighing every word for legal reasons. Instead, direct access. real technical support, maybe even Rimac's own engineers weighing in on a build that's just as ambitious as anything he's ever done with Bugatti. Except this time, nobody's trying to shut him down at every turn. For Armstrong's channel, that shift would be enormous. His entire audience has watched him fight, video after video, against a system that wouldn't let him do his job the way he wanted to do it. A build where the manufacturer is actually on his side, actively helping instead of actively blocking, would completely flip the format of his content. Instead of "watch me find a workaround because Bugatti won't help me," it becomes "watch what's actually possible when a manufacturer says yes instead of no." That's not a small shift in tone. That's a completely different kind of story. And depending on how it's handled, it might end up being even more compelling than the conflict that built his audience in the first place. Sometimes the underdog story people really want isn't more obstacles. It's finally watching the obstacles disappear. And for Rimac, there's a real strategic angle here too, beyond just goodwill. Aligning with one of the most watched independent car builders on the internet, especially after all this very public tension, would be one of the smartest moves Bugatti Rimac could make right now. It sends a message that's hard to fake. We're not the rigid, locked-down old guard that people online keep accusing us of being. We back genuine innovation, even the kind that happens in someone's home garage instead of on a factory floor in Molsheim. In an era where car brands are fighting harder than ever for attention and relevance with a younger audience, that kind of authentic, earned goodwill is worth more than most traditional marketing campaigns combined. There's also a broader industry shift happening in the background that makes this feel less like a random hypothetical and more like a natural next step. Car manufacturers, especially in the hypercar space, are increasingly aware that trust with online audiences gets built through transparency, not through locking down every repair behind a factory gate. Brands that have leaned into creator collaborations, letting builders, tuners, and independent shops actually work on their cars in public, have generally come out of it looking more confident, not less. A Bugatti Rimac partnership with Armstrong wouldn't just be good PR in the moment. It could set the tone for how the newly merged company wants to be seen for years to come, as a brand secure enough in its engineering to let outsiders in, rather than one that needs to control every narrative from behind closed doors. Now, to be clear, because this matters, nobody has confirmed this is actually happening. There's no official announcement, no leaked build sheet sitting in someone's inbox, no garage reveal video with a Rimac badge sitting on the hood. This is speculation, built carefully on a real, documented pattern. A CEO who keeps watching every single update. A builder who keeps getting blocked by the exact same brand that CEO happens to now own. And a relationship that, by both of their own accounts, sounds a lot more like mutual respect than mutual hostility. Whether that quietly turns into an actual official project is genuinely up in the air right now. But if you had to put money on where this story goes next, doesn't collaboration suddenly sound a whole lot more plausible than another round of the exact same fight? So is Mat Armstrong really about to trade Bugatti for Rimac? Nobody's confirmed it, but the pattern is impossible to ignore. A CEO who keeps watching, a builder who keeps getting blocked by the very brand he now owns, and a rivalry that, by their own words, sounds more like respect than resentment. Maybe his next build is another hard-fought Bugatti, one custom-machined part at a time. Or maybe next time, Rimac hands him the keys instead of locking the door. So tell me, would you rather watch Armstrong keep fighting Bugatti, or finally team up with Rimac? Drop your prediction below, and subscribe, because this saga isn't staying quiet for long.